if I could define the mission of education, and if we're still focusing, as we learn in business school, things succeed because of a business plan. What is the business plan of education or the UC system? And I actually used to work in the provost's office, and all I know is bureaucracy, the BS of education.
All right, welcome to the Brew. I'm your host, Valtteri Salamäki. Today I am joined by my co-host Luis, as well as our special guest for today. We got Alyssa Stump in the house, a very, very good friend of mine. But before we get started, you can give a little introduction about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Alyssa, as you know. I never introduce myself as I'm Alyssa because people think my name is Melissa.
Oh, that's actually a good point.
Yeah. So my name is Alyssa, and I currently live in Colorado, but I met you in undergrad and during my MBA at UCR. Great. Very happy to be here. It's nice to see where the magic happens. Thanks for having me on. Currently, I'm a Mountain Regional Director, now Director of Mission Advancement for Best Buddies International, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that supports students and adults with disabilities. And actually, you and I participated at the UC Riverside chapter when we were in college. And I also am an adjunct professor teaching Introduction to Business.
You're doing a lot. So you're going from nonstop work to also teaching.
Yes. Teaching I really love. It doesn't feel like extra work. The only part of teaching that's really intense is the grading, especially because I have 75 students and there's no grader or reader like there is at UCR. So that's the only piece that's an extra added time on my calendar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we both were TAs for 103 or 102 and that good stuff for Dr. Josso. And I gotta say, everything was fun until I had to, do the grading part, which is what our job is.
Yeah, especially because his courses are based in writing, so it's not like there's a method to the madness. It's truly just you have to read and sift through 70 to 50 to 100 students, depending on how many sections you have.
At what point do you just really kind of not give up, but at what point do you just start going
you get efficient. I don't think you give up, but you get very efficient. You know exactly what to look for.
You're just bouncing at that point between words. You're looking for hot takes.
Yeah, keywords. But as an instructor now, grading my own students and creating the curriculum, I know that I have to stop and take a break when I start getting harsher. Because then I'm not, I'm not at a key nine. I'm just trying to get over it and get through it, and so I have to really take a break. But with, the TA course, those assignments are set up so structured. You can't just find the keywords and say, okay, yes, you have it. No, you don't. And then it's pretty simple because his rubric is pretty great. It's just based on what you feel. It's an intuition. So it's easy to pick that out.
It's subjective, but at the same time, it had there's different criteria that we're looking for. We know how to find it, and it got pretty efficient. But I mean, I already don't like reading, so going through 100 students times reading notes times book reviews times the blue books
times your own homework
and work and everything else on the side.
Yep.
That being said, Val, I think it's really interesting that you just brought up that you do not like reading. I'm gonna ask you. At this, we're end of February.
I was gonna say something.
We're at the end of February. We've got 2 days left, I think. 2 days left, including today. Now you should be wrapping up your fourth book.
Did you have a book goal for the year?
I'm wondering.
You're telling me to do 2 books a month.
Oh, no, I didn't try telling you. You agreed to this.
You handcuffed me into
I didn't handcuff you. It was a company decision. We're doing it for, company reasons and such.
So
except for you, because he's an anomaly.
All right, have you finished your 4 books?
I'm on my 5th book.
There you go, already ahead of the game.
Already ahead of the game. But here's the thing, though. I will say my 5th book is the most boring book in all of existence that's ever been around. But hold on, this isn't about me. Val, what book are you on?
I am on 3. So I mean, I still have 2 days.
Okay,
left,
that's 3 Dr. Seuss books, and then what's your 5th book?
I was gonna say, are these fiction, non-fiction, business?
They're business related. So the first one I would get, it's almost in the realm of Dr. Seuss. It was The Dip, which is literally 100 pages, and I was able to get through that. Then there was Sell More Faster. That was 250 pages. And right now I'm reading Growth Hacking.
Okay.
And that one is about 350 pages. After that, I need to figure out what my last book is because I have to finish that in the next 2 days.
I have a recommendation. Simon Sinek wrote a book called Better Together, and it's like a picture flip book, but it has words, and it's just
there you go.
Key quotes.
Perfect.
There you go.
That's all that I need, and I can hit my 4th book. See, you didn't give me any criteria. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And you're all about teamwork, so it's a great book. Better Together. It's about teams. Yeah.
Yeah, I bring this up not to put you on blast and
No,
try to shame
absolutely,
you.
absolutely you are.
And I'm not doing it to shame you. I'm doing it to make sure that you're keeping on your goals. I'm proud of you. If you would honestly, I was gonna bet like 1 or 2 bets. Like if you,
it's great to have an accountability partner.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean.
do you feel better that you're reading?
No,
more
I really
books?
don't, because I'm trying to finish an SPI grant.
I get that. You make time. I was talking to Nikhil.
That counts as reading.
That
That counts as reading and
Counts
writing. That's
as
like writing
reading.
a book.
Yeah.
I was we should have a little framed like 5x7 portrait of Nikhil right here on this little chair. I was talking to him and he was just like, oh, in our book club meeting when he brought up the fact that, you know, he's like wow, I'm actually like, I've read more books this year than I have in like the past like so and so years. Do you feel like that? Do you feel good about yourself?
To put into perspective, before I started like reading business books, all the way until I finished undergrad, from like cover to cover finishing a book, I read 2. Like I never like it's
When
disgraceful.
I was in undergrad, I like really had to give myself grace because I'm the kind of person that has the OCD to want to finish a book from start to finish just because I feel guilty if I don't. Yep. And I really had to come over that in college because some of these books are so bad and so boring that I couldn't do it. I was like, I don't feel guilty anymore. I have to move on.
I'm not there yet. I haven't come to peace with myself. I read this book called it's called Assholes.
Okay.
And I saw the cover and I was like, oh, fantastic, cool. This book looks right up my alley. I'm an asshole. I might as well read this, you know? So I pick up the book and I have never like read a book so quickly in my life. I read like the first chapter and I was like, is this going anywhere? It's just him like talking about how people can be assholes and how to kind of mitigate it, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna plow through this, like really just like speed read it. I'm not gonna enjoy this at all. You know, I'm just gonna go as fast as I can. Ended up reading the book in like 4 days just because I was so like mad at it. That's why I'm on my 5th book
like,
and on my 4th book.
time.
Yeah, I was like, this is wasting my time, but I can't not finish it. I can't just like go like a chapter or 2 and like throw it into the bin, you know?
You're like, what if the ending was fantastic? I don't know.
It wasn't.
At this point.
It wasn't. Spoiler. It wasn't. Don't read that book unless
It's like
you're an
a
asshole.
wannabe subtle art of not giving a fuck.
See, that book is kind of decent.
That was a really
That's
good
a
book,
good
but it's like a wannabe. It sounds
it's
like
100%. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like there's no substance to it. Like subtle art of giving a fuck is like
giving a fuck.
Yeah, subtle art not giving a fuck. It's about like the message there is good and it's pretty clear. It's like if you don't care or even if you are someone who cares, there's ways to like kind of better yourself and kind of manage that kind of stuff. Whereas with this book, there's no substance to it. I think he just likes to say the word assholes. Like
you made money off it. You got it right.
Dude, it's a New York Times bestseller. Yeah, so.
I never understand New York Times bestsellers. I need to do more research on it because there are so many books that are New York Times bestsellers.
It's kind of one thing I learned about the certificate and the awards industry and all these things. They're all pay to win. If video games get banned for this, I think books should get banned for this. Like literally the fact that you can, and it's the same thing with sustainability nowadays. People pay to get like the stamp and like I am XYZ, I am New York Times bestseller because they know it gets the clout. Like I know you can actually get onto press releases, you can get stamps, certifications, anything with clout nowadays.
Yeah.
If you put money in front of it, you can get that stamp on there, and then you can say I am X.
It just feels so inauthentic, and also if everyone's doing that, then it's no longer special.
It's what it's always been about, though. It's always like whoever. That's one of the reasons why like, well, and this is a good segue into nonprofits and stuff like that. But like one of the reasons that nonprofits are special in their way is like it's completely merit based. Like it's like the way that they go about doing their things, the way they get funding, the way they get more volunteers, the way they do really anything, they grow the organization itself is through like merit. You know, it's like, is it a good organization? Where's the money going? What percentage is actually going to help the people that it's going to? What percentage is going to the executive board? All these kind of things go into it. Yep. Whereas with like a corporation, if, you know, like us being a private company, if we really, really wanted to, if we had like a good 10 or 12 grand lying around, we could just spend all that to get on like the news, like the actual news. Like we're not talking like smaller publications or local publications. If we had the money for it, we could get on CNN, we can get on CNBC, Cheddar, we can get on all these places. And not saying that nonprofits don't do this, but I think it's to a much lesser extent.
We have to get the Brew to use the budget to do that.
Exactly.
Which I think is a harder sell for a company, private company. Yeah, you can do whatever you want. That's why there's so much shady stuff that happens in private companies. At the same time, that's also why a lot of innovation, because you have to, sometimes it's kind of hard to kind of get through the weeds, so I get why people pay that money to get through it, but I just think it's a cheap win. Eventually it's going to bite you in the ass, because you can't really undercut success. Like, you have to like show the work.
I don't even know the name of the author who wrote Assholes. Like, I could, like, if you had a gun to my head and said, what's his name? I'm like, shoot me. I'm dead. Like, it's over. Let me call my wife one last time. Yeah, and that's because, like, I guarantee you it was just that. Like, the dude probably, I made the joke when I was first reading it, talking about how much I hated it, that all you need to be a New York Times bestseller is to be white, to come from an Ivy League, and to just put words on paper. Like, those are the
catchy title.
And a catchy title. That's really, it's like bam, bam, bam. If you hit all those steps, like, you're gonna get a New York Times bestseller, because that book is garbage.
So actually, speaking of garbage, I was watching some trash TV lately. It's the new the Real Housewives of New York City.
Okay,
How can you watch that?
That's pretty bottom of the barrel.
It's really good
That's
background
great.
for grading, you know, because it's just like you can go in and out and
For
get some
grading?
entertainment. It's entertainment.
Okay, yeah.
And the woman, her name's Bethany. Couldn't tell you her last name. Frankel. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
She's a Skinny Girl brand. Are you familiar with Skinny Girl?
Yes.
So she's on the show. And she wrote her book, Naturally Thin, and it's a New York Times bestseller, like, before it even got sold. And she doesn't meet that criteria, but I got very confused when I saw that, because previously I also had similar thoughts about how to get that status.
How do you get the status?
Yeah.
It's all who you know.
Yeah, and she's in New York, so, you know, they're based right there where the
I know
publishing
that-
house is.
Yeah, I know that there's, like, if one entity buys, like, a substantial percentage of the book sold in, like, the New York Times bestselling, like, algorithm or whatever, they'll have, like, a little asterisk next to, like, New York Times bestseller. Here's their title and the author, but they have, like, a little thing there. And the only reason I know that is when Don Jr. wrote his book had the little asterisk. It was like the number 2 or something like that. They had a little asterisk next to it, and I was like, what's that about? And I looked it up, and yeah, it's like if most of your sales come from one person or like one organization, then it gets that. So it's basically he was just pumping his own book.
Right.
He made it on the list, but
Yeah.
But it's so subtle. Consumers don't know that. Like, they're
Exactly.
not gonna pay attention
like
to these
I looked it
subtle
up. Like, how many people do you think looked it up?
What's the same thing for, like, things like VoyageLA, for example? If you ever heard of, like, VoyageLA, like, it's a pretty good, like, following, like, and it's a publication, but really what it is, it's peer-to-peer articles, and what they do is they just send out, like, oh, interesting story, answer these questions, we'll make a publication, you're in VoyageLA, right? And then recommend your friends, and you get 3 friends, and that's how they get the content cycle going. Great approach, don't get me wrong, that's really smart, but it's just weird, because then there's this, like, weird kind of, like, context of, like, I got on VoyageLA, I'm like, it wasn't like you had a unique story, you got recommended to do a story, but
Right. It's like the influencer model.
yeah. We live in a weird time right now. Like, that's all I'm gonna put out
true.
there. We live with fake seals for everything. that
Right. The
exists.
label is the goal, not the process or the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But going off of that, inclusivity. So I think one thing I've always been fascinated by is why you actually chose to go the path of, like, going the nonprofit route and inclusivity. I know we both been very passionate about Best Buddies and supporting those. With that organization, but it's always been fascinating to me because your skill set was aligned for, like, consulting in corporate America, and you would have killed it if you did that route. So what really, like, kind of pushed you towards the nonprofit realm? Because, like we say, that it's the more honorable route, but it's the route less taken by most people, especially that have an MBA.
Yeah. So when I entered UCR, I was actually a biology major. I wanted to be a dentist, like my mom's boss, who's a dental hygienist. She is. And he loves Disney. He works at Disney on the weekends. And every single room was decorated a different Disney character. And so I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have my own practice. I'm going to decorate my office the way I want, and that's going to be me. And then I quickly realized that I did not enjoy chemistry. And I stumbled upon business 6 majors later. But in the process of all that, I joined Best Buddies, the club on campus. I quickly became a senior leader in that club, and I just recognized that the qualities of people with disabilities are the same. There's a huge barrier to inclusion from stigma, and I felt some of those barriers in my own friendships and my own relationships. So I just related to the mission so much that when I got to business, I tried to leverage like corporate citizenship, corporate social responsibility with that passion, because that's kind of the avenue of taking the corporate America route, but still having a passion behind it. But then when I did my MBA, I actually started working full time for Best Buddies at the same time. And I just loved it. You know, it's not hard to do what you love, but it is a choice.
Yep.
And it's a choice to pursue that for money, because it's not the pursuit of money when you go that route.
Yep.
So for me, it was really just about recognizing people feeling a very specific way, feeling isolated and left out, recognizing that in some of my own experiences, and just not feeling happy with that, not satisfied. And so I was able to leverage my skill set to create that and, you know, build upon that mission, because I had that background and that business background.
So yeah, you just really used your skill sets you had, but really tied it into your overall passion that you had overall in the world of inclusivity.
Yeah, everyone wants money. That's, you know, that's how you live. But when I finished my MBA, my colleagues were going on to take salaries, you know, 3 times what I was accepting in my promotion to move to Colorado. And it was really challenging to recognize all my student loan debt and then, you know, bills and moving to Denver. But it still was worth it for me. I loved that I got to bring the mission of Best Buddies to these new mountain states and really expand and help them grow in this market, because, you know, Southern California is really great at progression and inclusion, and, you know, they lead the way in a lot of those areas in social justice issues. But for the mountain states, Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, the Dakotas, Montana, Idaho, you know, inclusion exists, but in isolated areas. And so it just was the right thing to do.
Absolutely. And what do you think when it comes to the world of inclusivity? Like, what would you like? More people obviously need to focus in on inclusivity. I think there's like a fine line now of like this entire kind of cancel culture aspect that has been created like way too far into one realm, and then there is social justice and social impact that needs to be focused in on, right? So for inclusivity, especially those that have disabilities, what are some ways that people can kind of get started on that pathway? I know education definitely is one huge piece on that. Like, that's step one. If you just educate yourself and understand kind of what's going on, that would be step one. But would you have any advice to somebody who wants to understand more and kind of build a world of inclusivity? Because that's overall really, really important.
Yeah. I mean, inclusivity goes so deep these days. It goes beyond just accessibility, which is, you know, the Americans with Disabilities Act movement that started a while ago. And if you want to be inclusive in your workspace or in your personal friendships, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like you said, when you asked me that question, the first thing that popped in my head was education. And it's just education because the biggest thing when I first started with Best Buddies, I was a program manager. So I was managing school chapters like the one that we were in. And it was helping and teaching those students how to interact with their peers. So they love the mission of inclusion, they love the idea of it, but then they get matched in a friendship with a student who has a disability and they don't know what to do. And that's the same for anyone. You have to understand what people first language is, where it's putting the person first, not the disability first. And that can go for anybody. Like, anytime you speak with someone, it's not my dancer friend Sarah, it's my friend Sarah who dances. You know, you put the person first. And recognizing them as a person before the disability truly helps with that gap of education, number one. Outside of education, like I said, being comfortable with being uncomfortable, because you're going to learn different behaviors, different mannerisms you might have never seen, and every single person is unique regardless of disability or ability. And, you know, it's just a matter of accepting that someone's different, and that's it. And it shouldn't be any more than that, unless, you know, you're a caretaker or in health professions. But on the friendship level, on the inclusive workspace level, the first thing is just acceptance.
Yeah, and I think it's a going back into like how social media and all these things have taken things way out of proportion. I think one thing, people got into this context of the world revolves around them, not others, and they don't understand like everybody is human, everybody has different backgrounds. Like, as you brought up, like, this person's a dancer, not the dancer of this person, like that.
Yeah.
You need to build people like, oh, everybody's a human. We have this human connection with everybody. The world doesn't revolve around you, and you should take your time to understand people versus just like straight off the bat just judging them. And I think we've gone to the point where, like, I mean, I think this has always existed, but I think social media just illuminates even more. But people judge off first sight immediately, everywhere. The second you see someone, they talk, whatever, you see their social media post, everything's just first off like, you relating yourself to them and then judging them immediately based off of your worldview. Is there a way around that, right?
Patience. I think people have to be self-aware, and I think some people are that they know they make judgments. Everybody makes judgments. Everyone's going to have an opinion, but what you do with that opinion is what defines you.
Yep.
And in addition to the like everyone look at me and give me likes, you also have a shorter attention span. Everyone's just scrolling, trying to figure out what's the next best thing, or, you know, do I even care? I click through stories like nobody's business sometimes because it's just something to do.
Yeah.
And I have no patience. I'm not paying attention. I'm not actually showing up for that person's story. It's something that they cared to show me and share with me. And that's, you know, even more profound when it comes to someone that's more different than you. I mean, these are my friends. Imagine somebody, you know, that has this mindset and interacts with someone they've, you know, a behavior from a disability they've never encountered before, and they still have that short attention span and no patience. I mean, that's such a barrier.
I think here, and we've talked about this before here, just the mentality of like the States, like the United States, that individualism, kind of worry about you, worry about what you're doing. But I think yes, when it comes down to just people, like that's there's no way you can make that very transactional, like really, unless you're like a sociopath, you know. It's like there's no way you can make that as transactional. Like you need to, everything you said is correct here. Is the patience, is the time, is the education. Educate yourself and be patient for them.
But also be patient with yourself.
Exactly. There's a learning curve to this. Like I'm not gonna say that there isn't. I mean, one thing I want to bring up, like tangentially, a little like kind of thing here is, I have an uncle who lives in Mexico. That's where my family's from. Down in Jalisco, and he is like severely autistic. He can speak and he can function. He can do a lot of stuff on his own, but he does need a caretaker, which is my aunt. And like growing up, like that was just my uncle. Like it wasn't like he wasn't anyone different. I never looked at him differently. It was just my really fun uncle who liked to have fun and like play games and stuff like that. Growing older, you start to you go through like teenage angst times where like I remember seeing him and I'm just like, oh, you're different now. Like it's like you start to associate that stuff with it. But then, you know, now I'm older and I see like, oh, I'm back now to where I was as a kid, where it's like that's my uncle who likes to have fun and likes to play around, and I get on a phone call with him and I pretend that I'm like somebody else and he's like, who is this? And we have a good laugh about it, you know. But I think a lot about how I'm so grateful that he is where he is in Mexico, and not here in the States, just because in Mexico, my parents come from literally a little tiny village of like 1,200 people up on a mountain. And everybody there knows him, and everybody there treats him like a person. Like nobody there treats him differently. It's just like, that's Lachin, that's who he is. They say hi, they know his name, he knows everybody there. Whereas coming here, you know, I have my wife's sister, she's autistic, and you can tell already, like there's already like just pushing into her like all this like stigma and you're different. And it's, you know, I think inclusivity is a really important thing. It's amazingly important. Recognizing the differences and trying to look at it holistically, and, you know, therapies that are there, using that stuff to kind of help the situation. But patience, inclusivity, education, 1,000% over and over again is what is needed here in the States. Obviously, everywhere else in the world, I'm assuming this is also the case.
Yeah,
but yeah, for
we're
sure.
in
Here,
like 53 countries, our organization. It's
amazing.
all over. But I mean, to your point, the way that we speak about people with disabilities as well is like, it's easy to say they are the disability instead of they have the disability. And that's a big piece of recognition that I think would help reframe everyone's perspective on it, that they're not the disability, they just have this. And it's like everybody has something. Yeah. So that makes it easier. But also, to your point of people just being people, and I forget what I was going to say, of course, but across the board, the education is lacking. And where I think I was going was, when you take someone from social media, say, and they look at somebody that has this, in that perspective, in our culture, I think we look for people that are going to build us up or bring us value. And the biggest thing that I've faced, even from parents that have these kids, is that they feel embarrassed by their kid or their friend that has a disability, because they think it somehow holds them back from looking a certain way. And I think that's one of our biggest problems right now is, well, there's no reason we should be embarrassed by a friend or a kid that has a learning disability or an intellectual or developmental disability, because they have taught me so much, and it's helped me get successful even. And so it's like the reality of the situation now is not only the education piece, but like people feel embarrassed when somebody isn't acting the way that they act or is different than them. And I don't know how to fix that. I don't know how to tell people, like, you don't have to be embarrassed, because they have to experience it. And to get them to jump into that, it's like, what are people going to think of me is the first question. It's like, they're going to see you as a great person, but convincing them of that is...
Yeah, I think there's too much weight on the first impression. You know, it's like there's too much of like, oh, how are people going to look at me like in this exact moment? Like, and people they take for granted the evolution of behavior, like how the first impression is important. Like there's obviously like depending on the situation, obviously, you know, the first impression has its merit. But by being embarrassed off of what the first impression is going to look like, I think you get into this point where you don't then allow that growth. You're already like inhibiting the growth that could come from you not being embarrassed, saying, you know, here's my uncle. This is my uncle. How's, like, don't even mention it. Just be like, here's my uncle. Like, you know, say hi to him. Here's his name, and then move from there. You know, and then grow from there. If they have questions, ask me questions. I'm more than happy to ask you, like, what are his triggers? What does he not like? What's the things that you know, affect him? But I think when you go into it with this first impression mentality, that's where like you're already putting a barrier ahead of like teaching people how to interact and how to better integrate somebody who might have these disabilities into regular life.
Yeah. So our organization looks at the person from K through 12 to adult life to, you know, we're working on some till death pieces as well. And we're hoping to start young, because it's all about perspective. Like you said, your thought process about your uncle changed as your own aging occurred.
Teenage years, it got really shitty, and then I was like, what am I doing? I'm an awful person. And then you get good again. Like it's
But you had that from the beginning. You saw him as a family member first. And so for a kindergartner that, you know, gets into 6th grade, and middle school is already the worst, but then you throw in someone or a friend that could be a friend that has a disability, it's like not even an option for that 6th grader. And so getting in at the beginning is key. But you know, integrating is the first step and including is the goal, right? Yeah. Like there's a big difference. So
yeah, it's one of those things where it's a societal shift. It's not something that's going to happen fast. It's going to take over time. The inclusion aspect allows it to kind of grow faster, because if it's what, especially in the United States, is like, well, actually this is anywhere in the world. It's not just the United States. But if you're in a situation you've never been in before, like you deal with another race, you deal with another gender, you deal with all these kinds of things. And I saw this when I was in China, for example, because everybody's taking photos of me, and I was like, why are you taking photos of me?
I had
the same thing, same experience.
Yeah, in Vietnam, like everybody's taking photos of me. I literally had like a group of 26 students, like with their little selfie sticks, just like nonstop taking photos of me, and I was confused. But I get it, because if you're surrounded by an environment you've heard of before, but you don't really understand and all these things, the curiosity can get into a dangerous realm really fast, because it's kind of like a curiosity of cool, or curiosity as in I don't like it, bad, or like push it away. But if it was more inclusive, right, and you see that in your everyday and you interact with it every day, then it doesn't become that. It's a natural norm. Then it is like that conversation that we're talking about. One
of my favorite little sides to that point was when I was working in the marketing department at Valley College. We had one of San Bernardino's sister cities from China come and visit, that were like trades people from China come to Valley College, because the trade program there is really good, like you know, all the things that they do there. So they want to go look, and there was, I want to say the dude, like big burly dude who was like at least like 6'5", 6'7", and all of them took pictures with him, and I loved every second of it, because like my job partially there was like I was guiding them, but also I was taking like some of the more important like PR pictures and stuff like that. And they were just, I was like, I'm gonna hop in this 100%. So I just like took like super high quality pictures of like all of them with like this big like 6'7" burly dude. And I don't know, I think it's interesting, like when you identify and you recognize that difference, and in some people will look at that and go, oh, that's strange, but other people will be like, oh yeah, 100%, like let me hop in that pool, you know, like let's say hi to them, and let's kind of interact.
Yeah. It's that balance of both realms. Like I said, like the curiosity can really go either direction, which scares me a lot of times because that is where, like, in Europe, as like refugees moved over, that was the same kind of thing, and it got very toxic, and the media talked about, and all these kinds of things, right? It's this conversation that happened really quickly, and it was trying to create a lens of like, this is how you should perceive this situation versus like, how about you just go talk to people? Like,
Yeah,
Right.
how about you just have this conversation and learn this is like a cultural thing. Yes, there's positives and negatives in any aspect, in any relationship, in anything in the world. But if you go purely negative or purely positive, it doesn't do good for anybody.
Well, that's a really good point, because something that people don't realize, and I think this is about any people, and you're allowed to not like people. And
Yeah.
so people expect when they're interacting with someone with a disability that they have to always like them. And it's like, no, they're just a person. You can still not like them.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And they just, there's no reason to feel bad or feel guilty, but you have to at least give them a chance. And that's the whole point that people don't get, is like, okay, I gave them a chance and now I feel really awkward, or I really don't like this person. They said something that offended me, or, like, we just don't vibe. So, like, move on. Like, you don't have to stay friends with this person forever. And that's another part of including. Including doesn't mean always accepting. It just means, giving that person a chance, accepting them if you do, and if you don't, then you just move on with your life.
Yeah, no matter what, just treating people like humans. Like,
Right.
and like,
It goes back to that simple point.
It's that simple. Like, we interact with so many people every single day.
Yep.
You're not supposed to become best friends with every single
Right.
person you meet. But if you treat people differently just because of different backgrounds and all these kinds of things, and it goes the same thing with like classism that exists in the United States as well, like where people are like scared to talk with bosses of companies, but then like they talk down on someone who's a janitor or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's also just like,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense to me, because everybody's human, everybody's doing something. Treat them with respect and talk to everybody the same way. One, people respect you more because they don't think you're above or below them, but at the same time, it doesn't create this like weird thing that exists here that is just like, oh, you're better than me, or you're worse than me, or like it just like,
it goes back to the point that I made about value and people feeling embarrassed by someone that maybe doesn't add the level of status that they're looking for, even though, like you said, I bet we would learn so much from that janitor. You know, like, it's all about your perspective going into it, but it doesn't matter the difference. You're certainly right that it's just it's about perception and how you treat people.
Who I think this, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on what side of the fence you're on, but I think this might have been Josso that said this. The talking about the, like, when they were going the Apollo missions, like when they were going to the moon, everybody there, like from the very like janitors up to the scientists up to the astronauts, they all had the exact same mission. Like I think like a reporter or something, I think, went out to a janitor and they were just like, what do you do here? And it's like, I work on getting someone to the moon. And I think like that is like super like amazing. Like that's amazing. Like that's like when you can build a culture where like everyone's mission is the same exact mission from whatever pay scale might be within your organization. I think that is the end goal, not just for that as an organization, but I think as a people, as a whole. Like you mentioned, like the golden rule is just treat others the way you want to be treated. Like that's kind of simple. That's it.
I mean, it's simple like that. And I mean, the Apollo mission was one. I know the one that Joss always talks about is GE, because like he loves General, like he loves good old Jack Welch from the Winning Book.
Yep.
But it was the same thing at GE. Everybody in the company knew what the strategic mission was of the company, and then once Jack left, the company just completely got obliterated.
I made a lot of money on those puts.
Yeah.
I did. I'm not ashamed to say that.
Oh man, 30-year high, and then pew.
Literally, it's still off the NASDAQ, right?
No, I think.
Is it back on?
I don't remember, but I had GE shares, and it was the most depressing thing in the world. But aside from that, I mean, it's so important for like society to function that way as well. It's like we're all for a common purpose. We're all here to live. We're all here to like just do our every day, and it's too much pressure to throw other things at people. You don't know what people are going through in the day, and that's why I hate where this like this context.
No, you don't. It's like everyone's trying to climb that hierarchy of needs. You are like you are at whatever station you are on, you're trying to get to that end goal. You know, like that's that self-actualization. That's where you want to get to. Like you have no one knows what kind of weight people are dealing with. You can just, and that's the thing, it takes so much more energy, I think, to be nasty to somebody than it does to just be like, all right, man, like do whatever you gotta do.
Like, quiet. Like just walk. Like I don't get why people waste their energy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So going back to the reason why I went into the nonprofit route, that's a great example. You know, you could chase money, which is like at the bottom, you know, your essential needs to live. And that's not what fulfills me. I'm fulfilled by helping others. And so I think that it was just natural. It made sense to go that route because I knew, now working in my space of corporate social responsibility, of bridging the gap of corporate sponsors who give us their corporate social checks and, you know, use that as their leverage to say that they're corporate socially responsible versus actually doing something. I didn't want to do that. I knew that it had to be hands-on, make a difference, because that's what is gonna, that's my money, that fuels me. And you know, I think life is about happiness. You're gonna die eventually, so you might as well enjoy it.
That's true.
And I didn't want to climb a ladder. I didn't want to sit at a desk. I didn't want to work 9 to 5 or gosh, a consulting, you know, entry level. I didn't want to work 80-hour weeks for what? You know, for a bank account? Like, how about just spend quality time with people? And that's why I like the human services industry, because I get to work with people every day.
Yeah, I will tell you what. Yes, 1,000%. I agree with that. I think it's figure out what you love, and I think when it comes down to it, it's like you knew, whether inherently or kind of very like you that's your trajectory, is if I follow this thing that I know that I love, I will fill the rest of the gaps. Like I'm gonna have a place to be. There's gonna be a roof over my head. I'm gonna get fed.
Yep.
All of that will come. So as long as I pursue what it is that I want to do, and that in and of itself, I think is noble, just because that's more than a lot of people can say. So even just that, like, don't take it for granted. Like, a lot of people just, and it's because circumstances. A lot of people will end up just saying like, nope, I don't care about this because I got to get this thing done. Whereas like you look beyond that. And I think it's something that successful people and people who truly end, like I say, when it's on your deathbed, when you're there, you end up happier when you just say, yeah, I'm going to just say screw it and do the thing that I know that I want to do, because everything else will fall in place. Worst case scenario, I don't know, like you just, I don't know, you just are no longer there.
Let me bring up a statement that has been said in our history, which absolutely in our history, YOLO here. I'm just gonna bring it back. Our history. I'm gonna try to YOLO. That was the stupidest thing because it made people do stupid things and it gave them an excuse to like do stupid things. But overall, I like.
But I think there was value in that.
No, there's. That's what I think. It's just like it's such a funny, stupid statement. But there's value in it. Like you literally only live once, so you should be focusing on the things that will make you happier, where you want to like spend your time. It's not always going to be the easiest route to go, but it's going to be way more satisfactory at the end of the day.
Kind of brings me on a tangent point because.
Oh please,
tangents are all about the show, especially for you don't get a timer, but he always gets a timer.
It's true.
So when I was starting college and kind of maybe in my sophomore and junior years, I went through a lot of turmoil. And even as a teenager, internally, externally, I was really trying to figure myself out. I was boy crazy, I was parent crazy, I was mad, I was angry, I was happy, I was sad, and I was all of the things, and I didn't know how to work through it. Mm-hmm. And I was in Josso's 102 class, which is ethics, and he said something in class that like really just was so profound, and I didn't understand it. So I went to his office hours and I said, I feel unethical because, I lied to my sister or I lied to my friend. And not that lying was the key piece of it, but like being a shitty person was the key piece of what he was trying to lecture about. And I just felt so guilty because I wanted to do the right thing all the time. Mm. And so I went to his office hours and I said, what did you mean by this? Because I feel like, how do I get to that place? And he said, the minute that you decide to be somebody, you are that person. And that was like, that blew my mind, because even though externally people won't see that, when you make an internal choice to act a certain way, to bring certain things to the table, you are that person. But with YOLO, I kind of think that people took advantage of that because they could say, I'm going to treat someone like crap. YOLO, okay, now I'm going to decide that I'm a different person and instantly be that person. But I don't know. I think that's there's two sides to it.
Yeah. I think therefore I am. It's, you are nothing more than a big gloop of meat with a brain, and it's like if you just
you passed your anatomy class. Didn't
I did. Gloop. I think that's an actual term. Okay, can you check it? Gloop? Is it gloop?
Gloop of meat. Gloop is. Yeah.
I'm a little worried to actually check that now. So yeah.
I think gloop is just a gloop. You know, it's like
it's like a chingus.
It's like a chingus. Yeah. It's just a gloop or something. Yes. As much as I bag on Josso, he's a very insightful dude.
Yeah. And I think that kind of goes back into what we talked about, like, off screen. It's important to talk with different perspectives and like talk with different people. You don't have to agree with everybody. That's not the point of life. Like, you don't have to listen to everybody and agree with it. And that actually goes perfectly into the next topic, which is formal education overall.
Can I just say before we go, selfishly, if Josso if you're watching this, I don't dislike you. Please come on our podcast. I know that made it seem like I don't like you, but I like you. I do. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Jeez, man, you just had to throw it in there. But yes, we would actually love to have you on the show. But I'm not gonna allow Luis to be on there.
You know why?
You know why?
But yes, going into formal education. The reason I'm bringing that up is because formal education will always have its purpose. But I think the fundamentals around how formal education is done right now it needs to change. It needs to, because it goes back into what we're talking about, how society tells you a certain thing, or like professors will tell you a certain thing, and this is how it is, and this is what the education says, and blah, 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 blah. But the real world works completely different now. And I think because of technology, it is skyrocketing past, and formal education's like all the way 10 years behind, be like, hey, what's up? And then it's just gonna get longer and longer and longer distance.
Yeah.
By the time, and like, I feel like students are starting to lose that value and start questioning the whole philosophy of why should I go to college.
Is this in regards to just university and college and above, or are we talking like overall education?
I'm talking about formal, like the
okay.
university and college perspective. I want to see universities succeed, but I just think the philosophies of how they're going about schooling and all these things, they need to catch up, and they need more people like us to get PhDs so we can teach and like change the system a little bit and shake it up. But I think they should be worried about education tech. Ed tech, I think, is gonna just dissolve the need for a lot of, the CSUs even announced like they're permanently going hybrid.
Yeah.
Permanently, like they're not doing in person anymore.
So when I started applying to be an adjunct, I wanted to, of course, be at a school that valued me and my skill set. And I was worried because I'm on the younger side, and I was 2 years out of graduating from my MBA, which I did straight after undergrad. So I started teaching at 25, my own class. And I asked, I'm sitting in the interview, and they have a couple of applicants, and they're older women. And one of the questions they asked me was like, how comfortable are you with technology? And I was like, I know all about it. I know Blackbot, iLearn, you name it, I've used it. Of course, the platform that they had, I hadn't used. So that was a really awkward transition into their specific question, but it's all the same. And, it's easy to figure out, and I know YouTube, I know social media. I can, I could navigate the things that they were, like the basic things they were looking for. I can open a PDF.
Oh, yeah. That's the biggest one, man.
I can sign a PDF online,
pretty advanced.
I have, my signature annotated already in,
Wow.
It's available to me. And the instructors that already existed, they said that was one of the problems they had. And I think this is a common problem across all universities, and this is a community college, but still across all college campuses. There is a generation gap, not only in faculty, but from the students. And so the faculty that have been tenured for so long are finally starting to retire and age out. And at this particular campus, that was the case. And so the professors were close to retirement, not ready, but didn't know how to use the technology that the college system adapted. And so I started teaching in January of 2020. It was my first class, my first semester. And 3 months into the semester, COVID hit. We went online. And so this last fall semester, professors left. Like they retired because they couldn't do it. And I think that speaks volumes to your point that there's professors that like the paycheck, enjoy the teaching, but it hasn't caught up with the rest of the trends of technology, which really took off quickly. I don't know how to fix that, because you have these old dogs can't teach, what is the thing? Can't teach an old dog a new trick or something, right? They're paid enough. They're happy. They have tenure. You can't let them go until they're ready. And there's no way around that.
I think that if doctors and people who work on the body in a very hands-on approach have to go to symposiums and have to go and continuously learn the newest trends. Exactly, recertify. Why don't the people who are literally working on our brains and like teaching us and do all these things, why don't they have to either recertify or go to these like,
or research the next thing?
Exactly. Or be very like, not even like them. Because when it's person driven, and this will speak to why people just left, when it's individually driven, you're not going to do it. At some point or another, you're just going to go, it works. I'm not going to go learn something new. Whereas if it's pushed in by the institution, then they have to learn that thing. They have to do it. And that's a part of the structure. If you want to work here, guess what? Every 5 years, you have to learn all these new things, or every 3 years, whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say 5 years.
Yeah, it's kind of a lot.
3 years. 3 years.
3 years, 2 years, yeah.
Well, the thing that scares me is right now it takes, on average, to get a class approved, like in the UC system, it takes 2 years. So by the time that class got approved, a lot of the information that was already in there is outdated, or well, I mean, like you can change the information once the class is approved, but even like getting that class through the curriculum, all these things from scratch, and that scares me because like at UCR, for example, they have a digital marketing class. And I always joke because we've had interns and we have employees that have taken those classes. And I asked them, I was like, okay, so what do you learn in that class and what are you learning from working with us? And they're like, well, what I did this week, like this weekend, was my quarter-long project.
Wow.
And it was like making like an ad campaign. And they learned like what is a blog and like this is Twitter. Like
Twitter.com, no longer a free website, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, for some people.
You
can pay. You hear about that?
There's a premium. There's a premium
it's
option.
like there's like super likes basically now, like on Tinder and stuff.
Yeah.
There's like super like, you can like send post, like if someone super likes your account, they can get like exclusive content. Complete sidebar, but go ahead.
Yeah, but like what I'm trying to get at here is like
that's the new special.
Yeah, that's the special, but that like that's how what they're teaching in digital marketing, not like campaign design or what ad strategies are, or like how to create a website or UI UX or like SEO, like these things that actually get you hired in digital marketing and what almost all marketing is nowadays. That scares me. Like if that's what like you're preparing kids, like consumer behavior, pricing strategies, those are fundamentals and they will not change. But digital marketing and advertising. And
I'll argue that consumer behavior is
ever
evolving.
It's changing, but I mean the fundamental, like going down to the theory level.
Yeah, it's like you read like I feel like I talk about it like at least once a month, but you read like any of like Richard Thaler's books about like behavioral economics and consumer facing kind of stuff, and it's like when he brought out like Misbehaving, like that book years ago in the first papers. It was just like he didn't get he wanted to be a psychologist in the psychology department at U Chicago, and they told him no, because like how dare you try to bring in feelings into economics? Oh no, in the economics department, excuse me.
Yeah.
And they were like, how dare you? Like no, economics isn't behavioral. Like there's no feelings in economics. It's like
numbers.
1 is 1 and it's
it's
numbers.
derivatives and intervals.
Numbers. So that's why he's a professor in the business department where he can teach like behavioral economics and all these kind of things there. It's always changing, ever evolving. Yeah. That kind of stuff is.
So I went into teaching after being a TA. I loved it, of course, but I decided that I wanted to pursue teaching because of 2 reasons. The first reason is that I value learning. I love learning. I feel like I'm constantly learning. And the second reason is because of my background in inclusion. I know from my full-time work that every learner is also different.
Yep.
And they may or may not have a disability, but everybody has a preference for how they absorb information and retain that information. And so because of my passion for that, I knew that I would be very hands-on with the way that I teach. But here I am in my 3rd semester of teaching, and I'm busy. I work full-time. I'll admit that's my fault. So my PowerPoints, they change, they evolve each semester, but teaching online and teaching in person is a curriculum design that I'm not well versed in. I had to figure it out. I think I'm doing okay, but imagine a professor who's doing research full-time, or an old professor that's just tenured and just teaches. They're golfing, they're swimming, they're hanging out, they're going to the beach. They're not putting in that work to really tailor their curriculum and their class to every individual learner. And it's crazy to me that it takes 2 years to get a new course approved, because I'm thinking if I had the time to do that, and that's what I did full-time, that's what I would be spending my time doing, is making sure that the learners, because that's the whole reason you're in education, is to educate.
Yep.
And if they're not getting anything out of it, then what are you doing?
Exactly. But I feel like it's a little bit harder for the UC system. Could get a class approved, it has to get approved by the UC system, not just like if it's a like if it was a private institution, right? Like I'm sure that would be pretty smooth sailing. Probably like a year process.
Yeah, you think of like even like the University of Redlands, you think of like USC, like those places have like, you know, the science of like the most abstract thing in the world, because it's just like, because anyone can just make a class
on blockchain.
Well, yeah, yes, that's why they have.
UCR has that too. I forget what they're called, like it's the mini series ones. Like the students can teach something a quarter.
Yeah, I almost took a Harry Potter class one time. I was like, do I really need this? Do I really need this? I don't need this.
That could have been fascinating.
Could
have been pretty insightful. Not gonna lie.
I just walked in full Harry Potter like garb, and the robe, the sorting hat on, just been like, all right, what are we learning?
Leviosa, you know, with your wand. And
oh man, I would be very worried.
But I think that is what they should do for professors. If a student can teach other peers something fascinating, why can't a professor say, I am very well versed. Let's say you go and teach, and the two of you are teaching now, and you're very well versed in whatever topic you choose. You should just be able to teach it based on your background and your experience. So I don't get that. You know, like if you're hired already as a teacher, you know you're going to be professional. You know they're going to follow the curriculum. You know they're going to base their class on learning objectives and have a goal for the course and the students. So why can't you just let them run with this new thing? I think that, you know, that's how you learn is immersion.
And I think you're kind of hitting the nail on the head there when it's like, I think if the formal education system and specifically the UC system, if it's going to stay relevant, I mean, it's the UC system, it's going to stay relevant. What I'm saying, it's going to keep its level of relevancy. It's going to have to do that, or else you're going to have these like private companies who are like I always get asked for that one like online private MBA. You know what I'm talking about? It's like Power MBA or something like that. It's like some weird company.
There's a lot of them nowadays.
Yeah, I don't know. There's so many of them now that you know, they're gonna have to figure something out, because if it takes 2 years to get something like if you submit a course for blockchain right now, or you submit a course for whatever crypto.
AI, let's go into some stuff away from you just bagging on blockchain all day long.
Whatever. if you write the introduction to sleeping blockchain a theory class, in 2 years from now, I'm willing to wager that the evolution of blockchain, Ethereum 2 hasn't even come out yet.
Yeah,
it's like, you know,
it's all gonna change.
Yeah, so I'm saying it's all gonna change. I bag on him, but I know a little bit about.
You don't know crap, but it's okay. It's okay. I like the subtle attempts of making.
You see the way he gaslight, like you see this gaslighting that's going on. It's like I'll learn a little bit because of Val, and it's just like, you don't know anything.
No, you don't. But I mean, going into that, when it comes to the course design and all these things, what I think the problem kind of also falls into is blockchain goes in a realm of like, there is not enough research there yet. There isn't. Like, it's really hard to like grasp the context of it, and it's more of an experiential like learning class, and I feel like that's why like the UC system, because it's a research institution, pushes back on those kind of subject matters, because like Berkeley has a class on blockchain, but the only reason why that got passed was because one of the leading researchers in blockchain teaches that course at UC Berkeley. So it's one of these like really hard fundamentals of like, it has to be research, there has to be enough backing behind it, versus this is where things are going, so you should probably teach it and like get it going. Because one thing I've been trying to push like UCR School of Business to create classes in esports. Sounds crazy, but like that is literally the future. Like, people used to make fun of the gamers and being like the nerds and stuff like that, but like I really wish that my parents weren't telling me that I should be playing sports and I can play video games all day long.
Could you imagine?
Oh man, that would be fantastic.
My goodness.
Of course, I still would exercise on the side. I wouldn't.
Your football defines you. You had some good experiences in that.
But imagine if you had never broken anything.
Imagine my nose concussions and my 2 knee surgeries.
Imagine just how much more Apex Val would be, you know?
well, I like, for example, I talked with he was a previous NFL player, and now he's making an esports league. And the reason why he's doing that is because he actually doesn't want his kids to play football. He doesn't want anybody else involved in football, because he knows how dangerous it is, and it can end someone's career. You actually have a higher percentage of being a successful Twitch streamer or a professional esports gamer than you are of a professional athlete. But you should still focus on your, you know, physical health and these kinds of things. You shouldn't just like cut it off on the side. But I mean, that's where the world is moving, and I feel like education's just like, that's not gonna happen. It's whatever.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think, you know, if I could define the mission of education, and if we're still focusing, you know, as we learn in business school, things succeed because of a business plan. What is the business plan of education? or the UC system, and I actually used to work in the provost's office, and all I know is bureaucracy,
Mm-hmm.
the BS of education. And, certainly I learned some valuable ways that administration can make change on campuses, but I also learned that it's slow. As you said, it's just always slow, and it's all built in personal value, what can I gain from this? It's like politics, but in the education system and administrators.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right. It's like what we've lost the idea of what education is supposed to be in a very specific context. In a broad sense, like, I think you're right, like, it's still doing its job, but formal education is losing its value because we're not actually working what are we working towards? I don't know.
I remember when I got like a deep dive into like the BS bureaucracy when it comes down to like education. Again, when I was at the marketing department at Valley, it was like the director of marketing, and then like me including 2 other people. Like, that was the team basically in the marketing department. And me and Paul at that time, we were like close, so I was being like meetings with him, with like the president and different people. And I just remember like we were in a meeting talking about like different like ad budgets and different print budgets and things that we needed to get done. And they were like, well, this event is in like a month, and they were like, oh, okay. So he's like, we need to get these prints out like immediately. So this is the money we need. And they're like, oh, perfect. Yeah, that money's fine. And he's like, okay, when are we going to get the money? And he's like, well, we just missed the board meeting that was this next week. So the next board meeting is going to be next month. And then it's going to take about 3 weeks for that check to get cut after the board meeting gets approved. So it's going to be like 2 months. And he's like, the event is in like a month. And I remember the amount of times that we would leave meetings and he would just be like, I'm just gonna pay for myself and I'll just get reimbursed. Like, I remember like that was always his mentality, and like that somehow like rubbed off on me in the sense of just like when I was at UCO when I was working for the business department there, I would always just be like, okay, is there a way that I could just like interject myself into this to where like it kind of goes around the School of Business, but it does the thing they want to do, but I can kind of take some heat for it as opposed to somebody else. And like that was kind of my mission. Like I would just end up designing stuff for them that would need like approval for like different things, whether it's like they had like an ugly vectorized logo and I was just like disgusting, and I just like redid it, the exact same logo, but I redid it.
It's all about the Comic Sans that they use for a majority of the certificates.
The certificate. Here's the thing: if you get, I'm almost certain that they're still using it. Please still be using it. But I got a Comic Sans certificate from the School of Business, and I was mad. I was pissed. I was just like, screw this. So I designed.
Someone had a Mac and they didn't change it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I designed one, and I was just like, I wouldn't even say, hey, can I do this? I would just start designing stuff, and I would just make them like look better, and I would start doing stuff. And they're like, here I did this, here I did that. I made these changes. I made that stuff there. And it was like, did anyone ask you to do something? No, but it was ugly, so I did it. And they were just like, all right, like they're not gonna fight me on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the biggest thing with education is bureaucracy, especially in the higher kind of stuff. That's why I think private universities, they're expensive, but they're going to be more cutting edge than really anywhere else, especially like a publicly funded one.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, about my question of what is the purpose of education, and in addition to the bureaucracy, I'm thinking, why did the 3 of us want to get a PhD? What about that is attractive if we're like smashing education right now? And it's because for me, I'm interested in creating education. Mm-hmm. I want to create new things. I want to learn more about the world, to discover new truths. And the gap is in that knowledge creation. We don't know how to deliver it. Yep. And that's I think needs to be what refocuses.
Why do you want a PhD? And why is it going to be in blockchain? And why will I make fun of you?
Honestly, that's your goal is a PhD in blockchain.
Emerging tech, but most likely it'll be like blockchain. We'll see what exists at that point in time when I get it. But honestly, for me, it's more of a retirement plan. I think it's most like satisfied.
See, you're going to be that old
Shame. Let me defend myself a little bit here. The reason why I want that is afterwards is because by pursuing entrepreneurship, I can then redefine and change classes really quickly based off what I see that things are happening. Mm-hmm. So I can actually provide value, and that's a fun retirement plan. That's my
decent save.
Decent.
So I like the idea of professors that do research that are actually working, mm-hmm. and constantly doing that. Whether it's a professor of practice like Josso, who mostly consults, and then he learns from what his experience was at the Marriott Ritz-Carlton hotels.
The Ritz-Carlton.
Ritz.
Yeah. Or the teachers that just teach and don't have any experience. They just went straight into teaching and don't know anything. And I think that's kind of the easy way out, so I'm glad that at least you're trying to redefine and deliver media right away, and even if it is just for a retirement fund. I don't think either or anybody in this room is going to need that as a retirement
Well,
fund.
no, like for me, it's like I get bored, and I feel like that would just be a perfect outlet for me to just like take this podcast, but take it from the students, right, and teaching them. But I mean, the other aspect of it is when you talked about the delivery, I do think that the delivery is going to completely change in the format of it, and that's where education technology is going to just skyrocket. And those that are older professors, they're going to suffer because, as you said, people learn in different ways. And by leveraging online mediums to do that, you can teach someone through, here's some practices for you. Here's like direct like visual cues and examples. Here's some auditory cues and examples. Like you learn by doing. Here's a project you can do. You should customize that experience, but it's harder for a professor to do because you have to like per person do that. But if you have an online medium that can automatically customize and be like, oh, you want to go into project management, do this class, this class, this class. Here's some projects to do. Here's how do you learn the best? Oh, perfect. Here's how you go about it. Here's some YouTube videos walking you through it. Yep. That's where I think education is going to go, because that's just very effective and efficient on the delivery. But I think professors and the people researching it should be the ones curating the content, especially in the world of business, with business professionals, with entrepreneurs, with people that are in the field. So I don't learn about marketing strategy on something that is completely irrelevant. It would bankrupt 90% of companies because they don't even know what like growth hacking is, for example.
I feel like that is going to create so many more barriers to entry though for professors, because I already personally, like, I'm not that old. I'm 26. I feel already disadvantaged because I've been seeing a lot about Clubhouse. I'm not on Clubhouse.
Do you want a Clubhouse invitation?
Sure, I'll
do you have an Android?
No.
Hell yeah. You suck, Val.
We can just stop the show.
All right, guys, that's a wrap.
That's a wrap. I'll give you an invite.
No, but that's the thing, like, it's invitation only.
Yeah.
I knew that because I saw Trish from PCT, I think, say, like, I have 3 invitations, and I was like, I didn't know you needed an invitation. And then I'm also seeing, like, Brian Kwan, like, he's in chat rooms with, like, really prominent people, and I'm like, what is going
really cool.
on here?
Clubhouse is pretty dope.
But see, I'm teaching. I'm a teacher, and I'm already behind. And I'm talking to students at the community college who are, most of them are fresh out of high school. And I'm talking about like Schitt's Creek as my favorite show, and they're like, "What's Schitt's Creek?" And I'm like, I'm not that old. I'm not that much older than you, but there's already a divide because I'm not immersed in the culture like they are.
But that's why I'm talking about a platform where you can plug into versus you having to learn how to do that. That's what I'm kind of saying is I think that would solve both problems, because that will always exist. There's always going to be a generational gap, like understanding gap, these kinds of things. But if you can then say, here's my information, and then have an online portal that trajects that out, and especially because we are going to go to a hybrid or online curriculum for a lot of things, people like it or not, that's where we're moving. That's where I think the future of education really is, and formal education as we see it right now is not going to be how we see it right now. Like, there's no reason for and like I really hope they get rid of, like, I appreciate the GEDs, but please, like, I took dance 5 and like I just stretched, and like
the GEDs, you mean the GEs?
The GEs, not GEDs.
Yeah, I was like, get rid of the GEDs. I was like, oh shit, there's a hot take right now, Val. I was like, fuck the GEDs.
No, GEDs. My bad. Oh man, I'm gonna get canceled. No, the GEs.
I'm just gonna clip that. Next time you run for office, it's gonna be like, Val doesn't like GEDs. Val thinks you're dumb.
I'm so screwed. All right. No, but the GEs are just so stupid. And like I get, like, you should, for example, in Europe, when if you study finance for 3 years, and you do 3 years instead of 4 years, and you learn a lot more in 3 years than you learn here taking 5 classes on top of all your other core classes and everything like that. And I know they're trying to make you well-rounded, understand.
So for me, remember, I changed major 6 times. Taking those different classes was what helped me figure out where I fit.
But as many as like you're forced upon, for example.
No,
I think that's right. It's just too many.
I think it should be optional. You know, like you have to take 3 at minimum, and they have to be 1 in each college. But
I'm on the same boat as you.
Why do you want to pursue your PhD?
Oh.
And
in what subject?
What is the path that led you here?
Selfishly, I'll give you 2 answers. Selfishly, for me, because and this kind of goes into the background of me. But graduating high school, I wasn't dumb, but I was dumb. Like, it was like I graduated like bottom 50th percentile. I really only had like 2 or 3 teachers there in high school that like actually gave a crap about me, because they were just like, oh no, you're actually pretty smart, you just need to focus on stuff. And in those classes I did pretty well.
That structure wasn't set up for you to succeed.
Absolutely not. But the teachers that gave me the option to, and like would help me on the side and stuff like that, yeah, absolutely, I did very well in them. And then just, going through the whole rigmarole, first generation, American, blah, 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 make my parents proud, all that stuff. That's for me. But more importantly, I think, is specifically in organizational behavior, I am just so fascinated on why organizations make the decisions that they make with the thing that makes them money, people. Like obviously, like the interactions that happen in like within the organization, like people to people stuff is interesting to me as well. Like, why do some people in like X position treat people in Y position so differently and things like that? Why is there that weird stigma of like, oh, marketing department just spends the money and then accountants have to take it from them? Like, why do those stigmas exist? When in reality, it's everybody's money and they work with it within the realm that they have to. And then also just like that's kind of it for the most part. So that's why I want to do organizational behavior. But to your point, if I had just gone into community college, because I transferred, if I had just gone into community college, and then tangentially through to my university levels with what I had originally gone in with, I would have been doing computer science somewhere, and just hating my life, probably. Like, yeah, I love computers, but all that stuff, and technology is very interesting to me. But like, it's not what I do. Like, I can't, and this, like we're built in a way that it needs to be like in-person communication. We have to see people, talk to people, interact with people. And if I'm sitting in front of a computer for 90% of my day, I think I would just like hate my life.
What's funny about computer science is when I took that class at UCR for the GE, I learned how to make a PowerPoint presentation and I learned formulas in Excel. I already knew this. I'm not like I finished that class. The homework was so easy. It was like a waste of a class. It was an easy A. Does that class still exist? Like,
it does, probably.
My 17-year-old sisters, my 8-year-old cousin who's in 3rd grade is taking class on Zoom as an 8-year-old, and so is my 6-year-old cousin. They already know how to do these things. Like, they navigated YouTube, and I'm like, what?
They're still there.
Are they
for
really
sure.
going to fall behind like that?
So that goes in back with my conversation with the bureaucracy. I have been pushing back on the school too, and Professor Rich is also wanting to change these things, so I'm happy that they are actively like trying to change. And the way they want to go about it is that would be kind of an intro to Python. How it should be. Like, you should learn like the introduction to what is code and not freak out when you see code, because it is not the scariest thing in the world. You just
especially not Python.
It's patience. Python's very
dirt.
logical.
Does anybody
Very
use
easy.
R still?
I'm
Or
trying
you
to
should,
learn.
if you go into statistics, you have to learn your data science. You have to learn R.
PhDs normally in education, it's usually R.
Yeah, so I learned that when I was doing my MBA, but it wasn't because it was a class. It was like a free thing the student union was hosting that we went to. And that blew my mind. It was like when I was considering leaving the nonprofit world during, like, right before COVID hit, I was like, okay, like, I've been here for 4 years, time to move on maybe. I was looking at all the job descriptions and qualifications, and it's all code. You all need everything for Python, business, everything for business
Python,
you
the
need
new
to
language.
know.
You could invent Python if you wanted to.
Honestly, there's new languages popping up every day. There might be a Python that exists out there.
And so we're really failing students to succeed. Like, I see this all the time on LinkedIn, but it's like the meme of you have to have 5 years of experience for the entry-level position.
Yes.
And that's what the gap is. Like, we're not actually teaching what's required, but businesses are not driving that in the education world.
Yeah, I think it's kind of ridiculous to ask for 5 years, especially for entry level. I think even 5 years for like mid-level is like kind of like, that's kind of pushing it too, in my opinion, just because everything is so quick now. It's like if someone like legitimately knows what their job is like 2 years into an entry level position, whether that's coding or whatever it might be, and if they're very successful in that role and they're good at that role, why not? Like all this like all this weird like, oh, you gotta pay your time, like you gotta be in this crappy position for 6 years and then you'll be a partner or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Time is the worst aspect, I think, for recruiting. I think it always should be based off of articulation of skill set. Like, always, like, some people learn faster, some
Or trajectory.
All these factors, because like as much as I bag on Elon, because I just hate how many people love Elon Musk, it's ridiculous. But the one thing he says that
this is an anti-Elon podcast, by the way.
I don't know, you're going with the game stonks and all these kinds of things, and Dogecoin, but
I do.
Yeah. What's it at today? Like 37 cents?
I don't even want to. Don't start
You're
it.
out to God's ears.
Not even there yet.
Please don't bring it up. But no, the one thing that Elon said was really good. good, which is like to build an exceptional company, you need exceptional people. Like college degree doesn't dictate that. Like someone with a college degree it doesn't mean anything. And honestly, most people that go to college, like you should be around the same age group and you should have fun and like enjoy the atmosphere and learn like how to communicate and be in the societal kind of thing. But his entire philosophy is like, look, if you don't want to go to college and you can just freaking learn on YouTube and Google free education, just grind it out and do it, why not hire that person? Because they probably are more driven and more dedicated to a company than anything else.
It's true.
And that just always goes back to my point where I'm like, formal education. It's just like it's so hard to me because like they don't see that, they don't get that. And I think it's moving so fast forward that that gap is going to keep growing until it's like crap. Like we're way too late.
I think we're getting to the point now where, unless you want to go to be something that's either in the trade programs or something that like you need school. So like doctor, professor, I don't know, anything in the medical field really.
Lawyer to an extent until AI takes you over.
Exactly. Lawyer to an extent.
That's something new for me.
I'll break that down in a second.
You don't need him anymore, believe it or not. You can just have like a robot walks in and takes his hat off and just like starts fighting.
Top of the morning.
Like the Monopoly
it's gonna be one of the spot robots from Boston Dynamics that's gonna walk into the courtroom. So like these professions that still need formal education, like researchers and medical fields and all that stuff, they still need a place to learn from people who are already in that field, I think. Because you can't just go and hack up a body. Like I can't go do that, like I could, but I need school unless I'll go to jail.
This ain't Dexter, man. Like
but when it comes to like the arts, when it comes to, I think even marketing, advertising, when it comes to something in the creative field, writing, just do it. Please, like one thing I always say is like, especially with like my nieces who are now like going into this, like one of my nieces is like, I think I want to go into the medical field, and I'm like, all right, go to school. And it's like, I don't know what to tell you. My other niece is like, she's more artistic, so she's like, but she wants to do like maybe computer science, like psychology and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And she's kind of bouncing right now.
That sounds like a UI UX.
Yeah, so I told her, I was like, there's a lot of things you can do. Is like you could either learn on your own or you could go to school and try to get that foundation, unless it's psychology, in which case please go to school.
Don't be one of those like gurus out there.
Don't be a Twitch guru, not Twitch guru, TikTok guru, excuse me. But it's these things of like, I think there's gonna come a tipping point where it just makes so little financial sense to go $30,000 in debt for a 4-year degree. For if someone wants to get into like running ad campaigns or getting into advertising, getting into things like
which you're not going to learn in college.
A lot of the marketing, exactly. You're not going to learn that regardless. So why are you going to go put yourself in debt? You're so much better off. Like if you are already accepting that you're going to go $30,000 into debt, and you want to be in marketing or you want to be in advertising.
30,000, I wish.
We're talking about the low levels.
About the 4-year degree. We're talking about the 4-year degree on average.
I know.
That's such a
I wish.
I graduated the undergrad without any debt, but
Congratulations.
My wife, she did not, and she got a master's in education from UCR. So I tell her that she has enough debt for the both of us.
Yeah.
So that's, yes, do we want to talk about amounts here?
No, we're not.
Okay. All right. So I maybe I feel
Let's
your
just
pain.
say I've already paid off 30,000.
Okay. All right.
And I still
Let's
feel
say
like
I haven't got started, and I will want to get started.
I don't know. Like, how do you feel about that? Like, do you think that at some point, like, it's just gonna make so much more sense to go like pay to be like someone's like mentee, or like pay $10,000 or even like 15,000, half the price, to go to a boot camp, like an advertising boot camp or like a marketing boot camp?
I think that creativity and marketing is all intuition. It looks good, it feels good, and there's certainly strategy behind the design, especially for websites. If ad campaign brings that into it, but
I think even consulting and stuff.
Even artistic.
Yeah, I mean, there's like certain fundamentals you can learn through college. I do think that if you learn from a business professional, you're going to learn faster. But the only thing that concerns me a little bit is if you don't understand those fundamentals, it might be harder to grasp what they're trying to teach you. So there's a balance of...
Yeah, you have to know some of the lingo.
Yeah, some of the lingo and some of the context. I mean, it's one of those things, we'll see. I mean, it can go that route.
I argue that a lot of the, like, if you learn the advanced techniques, that you will inherently learn the basic fundamentals. You might not be able to say what the fundamentals are, but you will fundamentally know
them.
Exactly.
You're gonna have to know them.
You'll know them. And then when someone tells you like, oh, here's how many P's is it again?
Well, there's
The-
5
5
according to
Ps.
Josso.
It's five P's, 5 C's. It's actually 4 and 4, but this guy said 13 on the.
I was joking about 13.
He's like the 13 P's or the.
I was joking about 13
Dude,
Ps.
freaking
But
Josso.
I know.
Product, price, place, promotion, and the 5th is positioning.
Yes.
Okay, yes. That many, them.
Them.
Like that kind of stuff. Like when someone brings it up to you, you'd be like, oh yeah, like that is what that is. Check
Makes
that
sense.
out.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Right.
But if that's what I'm saying, like if you can learn, it's like a language as well. Like they say like the best way to learn a language is to envelop yourself in the language. You just go to a place where they only speak the language.
You have to figure it out.
You're gonna have to figure it out, and you might not know how the grammar works per se, but you know how to set up the grammar. I mean, I was literally just yesterday. My wife, she was like, why are she's a teacher. She teaches a 2nd grade, 3rd grade combo right now. And she was just like talking about prepositions, and I was like, I'm gonna give it to you straight right now. I have no idea what a preposition is, or what a prepositional phrase is. I was like, I went through all of college. I got A's on a lot of my written stuff. I was like, I have no idea what a prepositional phrase is. And she like tried to explain to me. She was like, the cat is on the table. She's like, yeah, and if you pull the table away, or if you pull the cat away, like the cat is now off the table, you know? And I was like, what you're saying right now is such a cat centric perspective. Like, what if you're looking at this from the table's perspective? What's going on there? You know, it's like, and like it's that like language barrier. Like my first language is Spanish, so like these like very simple grammar in like for English makes 0 sense to me.
Oh yeah.
Like
Well,
0.
I even had friends growing up that only spoke Spanish at home and had to take take Spanish in high school because they didn't know how to write it or the grammar. They could speak it fluently, but couldn't produce it on paper.
I can write it, but I don't know where the little accents go.
Yeah.
That's my only fault.
I use autocorrect for that.
Yeah, I can write and read.
Yeah,
it.
my writing level in Finnish
I
is
could
like a
not
first
do
level.
Finnish. There's no way.
Oh, dude, it's
Moi mitä menee is still like the
hey,
only
see,
thing I know.
that's
you
more.
you just put little circles over the A's, right? That's all you do.
Well, that's
little
Swedish.
dots.
Oh, that's Swedish.
Swedish.
Same thing. I'm kidding. I wouldn't do that to you. I wouldn't
Don't
do
you
that to you.
don't ever
I'm sorry.
say it's the same as Swedish.
This will be the first time I'm gonna apologize to Val on camera, but I am sorry for saying that. I would hate to offend the Finnish community we've built.
Yeah, you I'm dead. But to answer your question about the lawyers and AI, I just wanted to quickly bring that back. Lawyers make their money off reading historical cases to create precedents. Yeah, so we're talking about grammar.
You're still not saying it right. Precedent.
It's a soft C.
I don't give a shit. Okay. That's their job, right? But the amount of hours they bill a client or they work with anybody else is based off how many hours they can go look back, and they usually only look at like 4 or 5 cases. An AI could read the entire history in that same time frame, build a really, really, really strong case, and then all you have to have is someone present it for the meantime until you're gonna have the
spot robot come out.
Yeah, the Boston Dynamics come into the courtroom and actually present the case. That anything that's based off of patterns or analysis and these things and to create a case, AI can always do it better. And there's certain aspects
Well, how about for the jury though? Like, how does that because emotion is a huge piece in persuasion. I mean, as much as the law is supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, juries are still people, and
they're super persuadable.
And they're super.
That's why I think a person will be so presenting it.
Yeah.
But I think
they'll just have a little robot in their ears.
Yeah.
This is what you say.
Well, no, whoever's going to create the case, but that takes a lot of the value away from that lawyer. What I'm saying is like it's disrupting the value chain. Same thing with like doctors. Chain. But like same thing for like doctors that are like spotting cancer, for example. They're going through and they're trained to do that, and they look at it, but like machine learning can do that so better, more accurately, and they can go through thousands of patients, make healthcare cheaper, make it more accessible for people, make grading faster, all these kinds of things, right? So like that's where things are going, and I what really scares me is I don't think enough people understand that yet.
Oh no.
And it's going to be a very quick move. Like it's just going to be one of those things that like everybody's like, crap, this is happening.
So that was actually part of my PhD application, was AI and how it relates to social media, like the social media intelligence, the movie that we spent some time talking about. I forget what it's called now on Netflix, the documentary.
Is it the one where it's like the dramatizations are happening and the kid becomes like a No.
I mean, it feels like a Black Mirror episode, but it's a documentary.
Social Dilemma?
Social Dilemma. Yeah, that's what it is. Because it's fascinating. Our purchasing decisions and any decisions we're making are being extraordinarily influenced by AI.
Yeah, I feel like me and my wife have a conversation at least once a week of she'll be like, look at this dumb thing I found on Facebook or like on Instagram, look at these people. And I'm just like, we're literally just apes that happen to like figure out how to do this. Like there's no, like our brains are not made for social media at all. Our brains are like meant to interact with like this many people on a daily basis and have this much emotional baggage. You know, there's a reason why like depression, like all the anxiety, all these things are just like through the roof is because I doom scroll until like 2 a.m. like on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Like I go through it, you know, and that's not healthy.
Oh no, absolutely not. I mean, social media is, it's awful. I mean, they can cause so many problems. And man, TikTok is so funny and addictive.
Well,
I still haven't pulled the trigger on TikTok again. I don't know. God,
to your point of people not recognizing it, when people recognize it, how is that going to change behavior, or is my question?
I don't think it will.
Anger.
Well, yeah, at first, and then are they going to embrace it? Are they going to turn away from it?
I think there'll be
What's
less
gonna
pushback on things that have to happen. For example, in the United States, we need to change our infrastructure. It has to happen, and there's been so much pushback on it for such a long time. It gets delayed over roads and bridges and our energy grid, for God's sake, and all these kinds of things.
Oh, don't bring Texas into this.
I'm not bringing Texas. I'm talking about
fault.
the United States energy grid has not been replaced for 35 years. The way that it acts right now, China has access to it. Russia has access to it. Iran is about to have access to it. Because it's come through a centralized mainframe that you can hack into, and you can put malware into it. They could shut off our energy.
In our energy grid's in our energy grid's defense. The standpoint
other perspective
we need the table centric perspective. In the energy grid's defense, our country's political stances haven't changed in like 50 years.
That's fair. I mean, it's the pushback either side, but like that's what I mean. It's like that education would help people push these things forward faster. Like there's a lot of things we're focusing on right now, and some people agree, and there should be social discourse about it. But some things we all agree on, but we just aren't educated enough about it. It's like we all need energy. Like things are getting hotter, so like if it's super hot in LA, the power will go out.
Yeah.
And then you don't have air conditioning. In Texas, what happened?
Well, as we saw, it's just more bureaucracy.
It's
everywhere.
Well, it's private, and the thing
it's a split between private and it's just split between some are private and some are not. And then
Did
like
you see the 60-something-year-old who got charged like
17
30? Is it 17,000?
It was one was $17,000, one was $35,000. They
His
just
entire
automatically
life savings
got just pulled out of the account because when you have a huge demand and less supply, you can increase the price point like crazy. And that comes
richest country on earth, and this is what they're doing to some poor 60-something-year-old in Texas.
Yeah, it's
obnoxious.
It's like the insulin dilemma too.
Exactly.
Yeah, the farmer
and I think that's where like if people saw where things can go and understand progress, and like there's progress and then there's progress. Like the reason I'm saying there's two is because there's progress what people are saying is progress, but they're really just trying to butt heads and like get all crazy. Yeah. And then there's progress, which is like look at where technology is going, look where we have to catch up.
I think that's a very good point. There's like progress in the sense of like here's how we think now as opposed to 50 years ago. That's progress. But then there's like here's where actual policy is in relate more often than not. Policy is like lagging like 20 years behind with
conservatives and liberals agree with these things. That's the thing that drives me nuts.
Have you ever Googled like weirdest laws in every state? This is your project.
Okay, all right.
Isn't there one like there's like?
I thought you can't chew gum in like Georgia.
There's an area I forgot. There's like a certain area by Utah where you can get away with murder and not get caught because of like some kind of jurisdictional boundary thing. No. I'm actually don't search that up. I don't want to cause any problems.
You want to go to Utah? Pat? You want to go take a
talking about hacking bodies?
You want to go to Moab for a quick little vacation?
Where all the states interact.
Yeah.
So, like,
Four corners.
Like the Four Corners?
It's sort of like that.
Because there's
he knows what
jurisdiction.
He looked it up.
There's like literally there's no because of laws there's no jurisdictional so if anything happens there nobody can do anything about it just because of bureaucracy and jurisdictions and all these kinds of things. But this is the thing that drives me nuts about the United States is like we're so bickering about so many different things that we're not paying attention to things that like the reason why Europe is progressing so far ahead in some areas like renewable energy and these kinds of things is because they've opened the door and at least invested into it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you should just swap into it, but if you're not investing into it, you're just kind of be like, nah, it's not we ignore it.
Would you say that Europeans are more collective than individual?
Oh, 100%.
That's why. I mean, here we're all about the individual.
All the individual here. We've talked about this ad nauseum here. It's like the U.S. is very like me, and like pretty much everywhere else. For the most part, obviously there's some exceptions to that, but for the most part, there's way more of like a collective mentality.
Nature,
yeah.
It's it just worries me because like it's worked up to this point, and I like
It's also debatable.
it is, but like what I mean by it's worked up to this point, like innovation has driven more success in the United
Sometimes
States.
he just goes.
Yes, but
Mr. Capitalist.
yeah, but like the thing that drives me nuts about it is just that like we haven't looked at the major problems that hit the populace, and which is why these movements are happening, all these kinds of things.
Well, even if we do, we're just not creating actionable change. It has to go through all of the different party lines, and
Heaven forbid the House becomes red again and the Senate becomes blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Like just like if
I'm
six.
anxiously awaiting the votes.
Goodness gracious! I don't understand how if a majority of the entire public, agree on a thing, why that isn't the thing that is adopted. Like that to me doesn't make any sense.
Infrastructure is 92%.
Majority. Democracy is supposed to be about majority. Right?
Yeah, but
Like
this is the
collective
representative
majority.
Republican, so it's like a representative republic.
Yeah.
So it's it's
It's-
like I'll take that into consideration, but at the same time I don't know, they're paying me a lot of money to do this.
To look
it's all
the other
about
way.
what they can get.
If the United States took out lobbying, like literally, if they
Oh,
just
if
took out
Glass-Steagall,
yeah, if they just took out the concept of lobbying, that would open up the doors for so many things, because then the constituents actually push back against those, and there wouldn't be as much false information. And this is one of
Almost
the only
as though
places
they'd
that
be-
you have like freaking happy commercials about all these drugs you can have that would save your life, and I'm like, dude, you cannot do that anywhere like else.
Yeah.
And like here it's just like, try this pill, side effects equals death. I'm like,
Yeah, it's interesting bringing,
please give me that side effect immediately.
coming back from our very long tangent for Best Buddies, when we were trying to get government funding in Colorado, we had to go into the Capitol building. I went with the government team, and we literally have to like stalk these politicians to get minutes of their time just to say, do you care about people with disabilities? Is it okay if we submit this?
Watch them coming out of the elevator
Yeah, it's why? Like,
because it's ridiculous.
why can't you make an appointment? Why can't there be a form? Why isn't there a process? They're all about processes.
Yeah,
but then when there's a legitimate mission happening in their state, and this organization that is, a nonprofit by tax.
money
You
talks.
Yeah,
What
and
the
here's the thing. And here's the rub, and I think another reason why deep down inside why all three of us want to get a PhD is like we see just how jacked up the system can be for certain individuals and for other people. And I think that in some way, shape, or form, we want to curb that in some way, Like if our research can in some way, shape, or form, or our pull, our clout, if you want to say that, like
Yeah, we're gonna be influencers, man.
we're gonna be PhD influencers. Once you get that kind of stuff, like it's different, like you might be able to squeeze a foot through the door and be able to do these kind of things that can then progress the things that you want to see changed.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's for me at least. Like, why the heck not? Like, if I could get a PhD and I could maybe leverage what I know to help an organization or do something in that world, why wouldn't I go and do that?
I'm not over the AI, and I think that's great, but I want to get there faster now, and that just can help you. So I'm thinking like, when you start the PhD process and you develop your research question and you spend 3 years figuring out the answer, it would be so great to have an AI robot tell me all of the existing data and research that matches my research questions, so that way I can do better and work faster.
Any computer science data nerds out there, we would very much appreciate a nice system that can do this, and I will happily work to get you funding and make
Like
this happen.
Statista, IBIS World, all
I'm
these
almost
ones
certain
of
that
databases.
exists.
Well, the
'Cause
databases do.
The databases
Oh, but you're saying
do,
a collective,
like
like,
actual
keywords.
collective
Here you
way
go.
to create into a report, and I honestly do. Yeah, I can see that coming
It's
to
not-
life
All right, can
really
you
easily.
scrap this part of the podcast?
We're making
Yeah.
this our own software,
Yeah,
so
we're making this scrap this part of the podcast.
it's gonna be called my PhD.
Yeah.
But
PhD for me.
yeah, PhD for me. Yeah, like what is the whole
the number 4.
23
Yeah.
of me. It's like PhD
Comic
for
Sans.
me, and all you have to do is submit. I don't even know. You have to submit just like your dissertation topic.
A piece of paper that says "I am a student." That's it.
That's it. But yeah, I think we had a good conversation going all over the place, and that's exactly how I love this show. That it goes from one to another, but it somehow always comes back together at the very end. But the way we always end the show, and I warned you.
Yeah.
Oh, you actually
Right before
you got warned?
I
Or,
did.
oh, he
Well,
literally.
I watch your show also.
Yeah, I know.
It's
He,
not like
you
it's a
watch. It's not a
surprise.
surprise. No, he's surprised every single person he invited on the show. He's like, by the way,
Every single person I invite, I surprise them because I think that then I
You're
love to
like-
watch.
You're telling them right now.
Yeah, they don't watch this. I love to. I like
we purposely
to,
pick people that don't watch this.
I like to see. I like to look into the eyes and see the glint of fear, but then very quickly the cogs and gears turning. Like, all right, what story am I gonna?
No, I've been thinking about this before he told me today. Since he asked me to be on the show, I was like, what is it gonna be? Because, well, you haven't even asked me yet, so go ahead.
So, what is your lovely failure story? Happy to hear
Lovely
anything. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I am very calculated. I'm a risk adverse person. I'm not an entrepreneur for that reason. We had a business called Oak Crepe with some of my friends. No. That could be a failure story, but I'm not going to go there. So when I was a junior in college, I quickly figured out at the time that I wanted to leverage my business skill set with my passion for helping people. And I applied to my dream company, Disney, of course, junior in college. Loved Disney, had an annual pass since I could afford it monthly. And I applied for their corporate citizenship internship. A very great combination of my passions and my skill set. And I went through the interview process. I made it to the final round. It was between me and another student. And essentially, it was all about their volunteers program, volunteers. You know how they have the... Anyway, and it was like about sustainability and fun and connecting to the community, which was what I was all about at the time. Still am, but in a different way. And they selected the student that had completed the Disney College program, which was a failure for me because I applied to the Disney College program the year before and got rejected. So here I was, like, qualified candidate enough to get to the final round, to be one of 2 people and not be selected because I simply didn't have, like, the Disney background. On top of that, I connected with the woman. This was right when LinkedIn was picking up. So I connected with the woman that I interviewed with in the final round, who was the director of that department at the time. And she said, you were great. Please try again. Love to have you. This is the reason why you didn't get picked. That's how I found out they went with the Disney College program student, because you got an email that said, like, another candidate has been selected. Thank you for your interest. And she messaged me back on LinkedIn, and I asked her, I tried to connect with her in the ways that I was being taught as a student ambassador to network and, like, set myself up for success for the next time I applied. And her son got in a car accident, and then I, like, followed up, said, I hope he's okay, yada, yada, yada. Years later, a year later when I was graduating, and before I knew I was going to do my MBA, I still wanted to do that. And no response still. So it was like, I thought I connected with this woman really well, got rejected twice from the college program, then the internship, then this actual woman. But we're still connected on LinkedIn, so that's kind of cool. But that was hard for me because I knew I wanted to connect my impact with corporate America, and that was what actually changed my direction to the nonprofit world, because I was like, that is dumb. Who's the better qualified candidate? So it's, like, written somewhere. Maybe it's because that person was already introduced to the Disney world, and so they were more qualified in that way. But here I am, like, vulnerable and honest, making it to the end, connecting with this woman, and then still, like, total rejection.
Yeah, cut off. But do you think that kind of moment taught you a lot of, like, and helps you now in your professional world and Best Buddies and kind of how you perceive and work with others, or have kind of improved your own career trajectory overall?
Yeah, so that was the first time I had ever DM'd somebody on LinkedIn, especially a hiring manager. And first, that taught me about how to just, put yourself out there. So I'm okay with being vulnerable and honest, regardless of rejection now, which is why I love that you do the failure story, because no matter what, you learn something from it, and it could define your direction if you let it. And in my career now, I still strive to do the same things personally, but professionally, when now I'm in a position, I'm a director, and I'm in a position to influence younger students or interested parties of Best Buddies, or just of the nonprofit world generally, I now have that experience of, like, that lack of individualization and personalization that came from that one conversation with this woman, that I don't do that. I treat people differently. At least I try to.
Do you think that kind of having that, like, having her ghost you, do you think
it's
that,
like, way before ghosting was big.
Do you think
It's
that
funny.
kind of pushed you, because you mentioned this before you even thought about getting into the MBA program. Do you think that having that sort of, like, pseudo rejection again kind of made you go in the direction of the MBA as opposed to maybe applying again for the fear of, this person obviously not responding to you, maybe gonna identify you again and then kind of reject you?
No, actually, the simple reason why I went and pursued an MBA was because I got a full tuition waiver, and I couldn't turn that down. And I considered, other schools. I love UCR. I speak highly about it. Val and I are invited to share our love of it often. But I love education. I said I love learning. So a free degree was being offered to me, and I was able to work full time while doing it. So it was just kind of a no-brainer. But I probably wouldn't have applied to Best Buddies if I didn't pursue my MBA. If I was not going to get my master's degree, I don't think I would be where I am today. So again, education kind of led the way for me there.
Goes full circle. So
yeah,
great. I appreciate that story, and I really appreciate kind of how you brought up the world of ghosting before ghosting was a thing, and and how it all kind of ties together, because like people deal with that all the time. And I think one thing I always encourage students that I had when I was TAing as well is I was like, look, you don't know what's gonna happen. The worst thing that happens, the worst thing is either they say no or they don't respond. That's it.
That's so funny that you say that, because I work in fundraising, so it's like the worst thing that a business is going to say when you ask them to sponsor is no.
Yeah.
But still, facing rejection, because that's kind of personal. It says like, you as a candidate are not qualified, or we don't want you. You're qualified, but we don't like you. That's hard. But also, I think it has taught me that I only now want to interact and go to places that actually like me for the honesty and vulnerability that I show up with. If that's not, something you're interested in, then I'm not going to fit in there anyway. So that's the key piece for me, is just, treating people with kindness, whether I know them or not, trying not to ghost people. Life is busy. We all know it.
Yep.
We take days to respond to each other sometimes. And it's not because we don't like each other or rejecting each other, but it's just because things get busy. But as a professional, I try to help the next generation leave a better legacy than what I was presented with when I started entering the market.
Yeah, and the one thing I would kind of say overall about rejection is, like, when you get rejected for a company, it actually says a lot more about them than it does about you. It's not a defining moment for yourself. Like, you are yourself as an individual. It's their selection, it's their choice. But it's really how you kind of perceive it and move on from there than anything else. But very much appreciate you sharing that story. Very much appreciate you being on the show and us talking about all kinds of things, starting with books. Thanks for bringing that all the way up, all the way to AI and lawyers.
I'm excited to see what your next book is going to be.
I got 2 days to figure that out. Actually, technically tomorrow to figure that out.
Better Together.
Oh, yeah, Better Together.
Oh, Better Together.
Simon
Better
Sinek.
Together. Simon Sinek.
All right. It has pictures, right? It's on.
It has pictures. It's like a
The Giving Tree.
Captain
of
Underpants book where you gotta flip through and change
Perfect.
the stuff around.
Perfect. That is right up my alley. But
I am looking forward to coming on again in the future when we're at a brewery.
Yes,
and
please.
like with your episode with Bruce, we just tried different beers and.
I'm gonna be dressed up as the person in the back, like a barkeep. I'm just gonna be in the back shining one cup the whole time.
You're please. Oh, you just gave me a perfect idea for that show. But no, absolutely. That will be the next time you're on. We'll for sure do that
Just,
over a nice flight of
Four
beers.
Loco.
A Four Loco, man. What kind of show?
By the end of the show.
Yeah, when you need a little pick me up.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, overall, super excited. Thank you for being on the show. Anything you want to close it out with? And we'll close out for today's show.
Thank you for having me. And I want to do. Can I do an over and under for you? Or overrated, underrated?
Oh, yes.
You want to host it?
I just have one that
you have one. Okay.
I thought you might ask me, and I brought it up today. But it's Clubhouse. Over or underrated.
Oh, super underrated.
Yeah.
Mega
I
underrated.
think it's overrated, but I haven't been on it
you
yet.
haven't
So
been on it?
Under, underrated, and I'm on Android, and I can't even get on. But I know it's super underrated as of right now. It's
I
crazy.
just feel like it's gonna turn into something uncontrollable, and there's gonna be like aimless things and purposeless things happening all over the place.
I think that's anywhere though. I think that's all social media.
I think what's gonna happen is this. I think that because the other social media.
You opened Pandora's box, by the way.
The other social medias are already taking it. Like Facebook and Instagram said they're already developing a Clubhouse. of their own. And I
Yeah, I
believe
saw
that
that on-
Twitter is also developing a
They already
Clubhouse
had
app.
one. They're just activating it.
Exactly,
It existed 3 years ago, but like it never really got traction. Now they're like
So
ramping it up.
now they're going to have like a Twitter version of Clubhouse, and then there's going to be Clubhouse, like the thing. I think what might end up happening is, because right now what is like pervasive through Clubhouse is like betterment, help, where industries are going, that kind of stuff. More business oriented, progression kind of thing.
Not which boba. I saw Brian was on the other day. It was like boba bubble tea, which is better.
Yeah,
and
so
I was
those are really fun to hop in sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I'll hop into some that are just like that are like is pineapple on pizza acceptable? And then it's just like 3 people going like no. And you're just like yes, I love this.
So is it video chat? Is it texting?
It's all voice.
All audio.
All
voice.
voice. And
Yeah.
that's amazing about it because like it lowers that sort of like, oh, I don't want people to see my face. I don't want people to kind of get what it is.
I wonder what the catfishing of Clubhouse will be.
Oh,
in
it's
the
gonna be
future.
fantastic. It's gonna be people pretending to be Elon Musk on his account.
Right.
No, but the accounts are verified, and there's like they're
Okay.
trying to mitigate that stuff pretty.
That's
early.
why they're like slowly traction and they're not letting
Yeah,
everybody
invitation.
flow
That's
in.
why that's
Yeah.
why it's a closed beta, and they're very smartly not allowing Android because that's where the bots come from. So it's like on iOS they can control that kind of stuff, and they can make sure that there's.
Hey, feed
Did you fade me? Can I
black.
get?
Look.
Oh wait, is my voice still on?
Yeah.
Get it? Just
Okay, hold on.
Your voice is
Oh
so
Jesus
bad.
Christ. Okay. So no, it's. I think it's really cool. I think what's
Give me
gonna
that
end up
50-second
happening.
timer.
I think what's gonna happen is Clubhouse is gonna become the LinkedIn of those channels. Facebook and Instagram. That's where all of. That's where the QAnon is gonna go. that's for their Clubhouse stuff. Whatever Facebook calls it. I'm not gonna say that joke. And then Twitter is just gonna be like all like clout chasers and whoever it might be, just like being like a blah blah blah.
Sure.
And I think Clubhouse is just gonna be like business development, more LinkedIn kind of stuff.
Well,
'cause
that's exciting.
Shit.
that's what you end up seeing. He's angry. See the anger he gets just from
I don't
not
have an
being a high
invitation.
young Clubhouse. No, he has an invitation.
Oh, he just can't use
doesn't
it.
have.
I can't access it.
can't access
No, the way that I would put it is Clubhouse made social media actually social, and I think that's why
Yes.
I really like
I
what
love
they're
that.
going with it. And podcasting is the biggest thing now. Everybody is trying to build podcasts. And it's an easier venue for you to like have conversations with people, and then you can pull audio files and stuff like that. I think it is the future.
We
where social
want him
media is
to get Clubhouse for this one reason is like, cause for example, like if all three of us had a Clubhouse account, like before the show, I could have just given you access and we could have started the thing. It's like when we do these podcasts, all we have to do is put our phone right here on Clubhouse, and we could be in it.
Podcasting.
Exactly, we could be podcasting on Twitch, podcasting on Clubhouse, or we could just plug in our headphones and have like a headphone
Yeah.
dangling from our ear and the microphone right here. These are things that we can do.
I'll
when
buy
we-
a burner phone for.
Yeah, we just keep
burner
telling him,
iPhone?
buy a burner iPhone. But then here's the thing that's gonna happen. He's gonna be like, oh, I kind of like this.
No, I don't. I'm not gonna go that route. Nope.
I just converted my boyfriend from a Droid to an iPhone.
It's so much better.
And
You get the
it's
blue
like
bubble. When you get the blue bubble, you're like,
we could
hell
play games
yes.
together.
Dude, I will
And we
always.
could like airdrop pictures and
Amazing.
notes.
I
and-
want that green bubble in those texts just to know I'm there. You know, it's just like that.
You're ruining the party. You're
the whole group
it's like
chat.
you're
Like,
messing up
'cause
the vibe.
Then when you like it or love it in an iPhone, it just says like Alyssa
Yeah.
loved an image. It's just like, what the heck
no
does
one
that
wants.
mean?
I want to see
No,
the
I wanna
bubble
see
on
the
top.
bubble.
Yeah, you want to see the bubble. You don't even know what.
Oh no, it sends me a message. It literally
Yeah,
says
no,
that you.
Yeah. We know. That's what you see. What you're supposed to see is what we see.
I know. That's what makes it so satisfaction. All right, yeah, I'm ending the show right here. But that was a
very
really
underrated. And I'll give you an
Yeah.
invite, and you'll see why.
yeah.
Cool.
But yes. I like the route that's going. Yeah, I'll get a burner iPhone. Well, I'll get like whatever the last generation that it works on. I figured it out because I found my iTouch.
There's
Maybe
like
I don't know.
there's a sale right now. You can get like an iPhone X, the one that I have, for like $300 on Amazon.
It's not terrible.
It's not awful.
We'll see. Let's see our company budget.
But
But
you just need Wi-Fi. in
yeah, I
theory,
just need
right?
Wi-Fi.
need
Exactly.
Wi-Fi,
I don't need a SIM or anything like that.
Yeah.
But appreciate everybody for tuning in. It's been a great show, and I'm happy that we ended on Clubhouse. Next week, we'll be starting getting guests, specifically for Women's History Month. Obviously, this ties into that momentum. And then from March 8th to the 12th, or 11th actually, we're helping host the first Entrepreneur Summit, where there's 16 female entrepreneurs or leaders that are going to talk about in a conference for UCR. So definitely stay tuned for more information on that. But that's it. That's a wrap for today's show.